how should we feel about the latest CBA news and what Russell Wilson just said?
Well, listen, I need to remind, and I'll lean on Dominique's expertise in this regard and by sharing with you what I said to Max last week. I believe we were in Vegas when I said this. I am a proponent of the players doing this deal if indeed the players themselves are limited to 16 games. You know, that's what you have reserves for. In other words, no player can play more than a maximum of 16 regular season games. I think that the roster spots, you can, elevate it from 53 to 60. Mm-hmm. I also think, me personally, I think they should be trying to get 50%. You know, if 1.5% equals $5 billion, we're going from 47 to 48.5%, and this equals an additional $5 billion in revenue. What's wrong with an additional $5 billion in revenue for another $5? I mean, they're going to make about $20 billion off of this. What's wrong with giving you 10 of it, for crying out loud? They're going to make another 10. It is a partnership after all, is it not? I think under those conditions, you do the 17 games. The thing that I don't like, that I haven't heard from the players, everybody wants to poo-poo it because it's 17 games. I'm saying it really doesn't matter if you mandate that nobody can play more than 16 regular season games. I think it gives the coaches, the coordinators, the head coach, etc. It shows what they're made of by having to be innovative enough to come up with creative measures in order to sub guys out for one game, make sure you play somebody else another game, and just make sure that the guys are limited. I'm not talking about being on a roster. I'm not talking about being on a sideline. I'm talking about guys being on the field. You actually do not play more than 16 games.
And you also, you mentioned in that to expand the rosters, which means more players, which means less money for the players. So I don't know that the players would necessarily feel that great about that. But a couple things.
But if you get the more money, even
I think
7 guys,
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, being a few billion is still it.
And I think by and large, no one, like most players, if they don't play, it's not going to affect the way that fans tune in, which is what affects the money, unless the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are kind of the guys that we would argue might need to play all 17 games because that matters, and they'll probably get the lion's share of the money when it comes into the salary cap because they have that negotiating power. But I think that it's important to know Russell Wilson's comments are interesting because he's a powerful player and he brings up the MLB and basketball. But I think it's important to understand that in the last decade plus, no major sports union, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, the unions have not taken a step forward financially. They have all been taking steps back financially. What is important about this deal, and if you think it's a good deal, what you would argue is that this is the first example of a modern sports union in the last, I'd say 15 years to take a step forward. Even baseball that we think about is uncapped. In the last CBA, they instituted a lot more stringent rules against or taxes for going over a certain amount, and it limits the salary. So
How is this a step forward?
Well, I think it's a step forward financially because they say that if you go with the 17 games, you go up to 1.5%, which they estimate at $5 billion, which my math suggests that they need to get huge TV deals to make that happen. So it will be a step forward financially. The question is the cost of a 17th game worth that step? Because that is an enormous chip for the guys to play. And if they play it now, then they're saying that 1.5% or $5 billion is a big enough cost to withstand whatever amount of risk that comes with this. I'm not sure that it is, but I think that you could argue that it is, but the reason why you might not think this is a good deal, because of the tweets. And because of the votes. It's only a good deal if the players think it's a good deal. And it seems like at least half of the players think it's not a good deal, which is,
Max,
a pox on the leadership's part to not get that through.
I want Max again, but I have one quick question. So if players are going to play an extra game, will they get longer health benefits? Because that's a concern as well in terms of insurance and the wear and tear on their body.
That was not a part of the proposal. And their careers may get shorter, which means that they may not make it to the 3-year vested period, which is at which point where you will get 5 years of health insurance after retirement. I know this is all minutiae, tiny things.
No, I find the health insurance very interesting.
That the fans don't necessarily care about, but I think it's important. And we're at a situation where there's a lot of friction. There's a big divide in the union. When we negotiated the deal, when I was a part of the executive committee, we got to a point where we all came together, and it was close to unanimous with the exception of the Steelers. Going forward in a situation where this is split, and they have elections coming up soon for the president and the executive committee of the Players Association, they are in a very tenuous period. Max, what do you think?
First of all, yes, the NFL labor union is going forward or rising as others are coming down a little, but that's mainly because where they started from. You know, the Major League Baseball's had the best union for so long. And the NFL has demonstrated to its players, not only do they have a de facto monopoly, but the players themselves, in terms of their star power, are not what drives the league to the extent that, say, the NBA is. So considering the position from where they started, it's good that they're making progress, but I think that explains, that's the lion's share of the reason they're making progress. They had nowhere to, not true, they didn't have to go up, but they did. They had more room for improvement. About this deal itself, this shows why businesses must be regulated, why you need regulation. A business is like a shark. Morality is irrelevant. They're amoral. The job is to make money. That's it. So when the NBA shows, the NFL rather shows you back in the day like the heart beating and the we care and all that stuff, the NFL wants to make money. Like, think otherwise. And therefore, is it hypocritical of them to talk about how much they care? Yeah, probably. But is it hypocritical in a deeper sense? No, because they're just a business. They're just trying to make money. Here's the latest example. They talk ad nauseum about player safety, but they suppressed information. They had studies that they intentionally suppressed so people wouldn't find out how dangerous the sport is. Now, for a fan, I'm a football fan. I'm glad that there's an extra game. More football, right? And a lot of people will feel that way. But for the players, look, the NFL is saying 17 games, but one fewer preseason game. Let's remember what was discussed not that long ago. Hey, what if there was only one preseason game, and then we'll add an extra game to the regular season? Because you don't play preseason at the same speed, not the starters and all that. So it's like, okay, we'll trade 3 preseason games for a regular season game. Maybe that comes out in the wash, more or less, and there's more money for everyone. Now, all of a sudden, it's no, we're going to trade you 1 preseason game. For a regular season game.
There is no way to come to a point where there is enough reduced practices or reduced preseason games that equals up to the amount of punishment and danger you put yourself in for a regular season game.
Right.
The question isn't, can you get that trade-off?
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.